I don't want to be that person
Right.
that when big moments like that of our history happens, like I wasn't there because I was too afraid or because
Right.
I didn't understand the fullness of the moment. You don't always see the great benefit of a situation until time has passed. And then you start to realize the seed that was implanted in you, even at my age of 16, and how that directed me for the life's work that I have committed myself to do. Now I have a son and a daughter and be able to share that. Like, son, I was there. Your daddy was there. To have that pride to say that.
Welcome to Justice and Power. It's my honor to welcome our next guest, Farajii Muhammad. He is a producer on The Culture and also a host, and that's the network founded by Roland Martin. So I want you to get into it, Farajii. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, I serve as the host of The Culture on the Black Star Network. And first and foremost, Ms. Nakeem, I want to thank you for the opportunity for us to be a part of this conversation, Justice and Power podcast. And, because a lot of the work that you've been doing, a lot of the work that I've been blessed to do over these past few years, we're right in the same path. We're working toward the same goal. So the work that I do with the Black Star Network is to use that space, to use that platform that I was blessed to be able to get when Brother Roland reached out to me and say, hey, look, we need a voice like yours on the network. And I was honored and certainly, jumped at the opportunity. And, seeing how he moved on his individual show to see his growth in creating a space for Black voices, the way he's done it is phenomenal. So, just to be out the gate, be a part of the first cadre of voices is truly a blessing. But then I also been doing social justice work since Nakeem. It didn't hit me until recently that I've been doing social justice work, racial justice work for the past 25 years, 25, nearly 30 years.
Wow.
I remember when the Million Man March came, the first march back in 1995, that great convening of Black men by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and so many others. I was 16 years old when that happened. And I remember being in high school and actually organizing, trying to get people to come with me to the march, trying to get my friends, because there was a bunch of Black boys, we all hanging out together. And they were like, bro, hell no, you might get killed out there. And I was like, well, and I just kept remembering me saying to them, you gotta die for something.
Right.
That's 16 years old.
Right. That sounds like Malcolm X.
You gotta
Right.
die,
Yeah, for some, you fall for anything.
you fall for anything, right? And it's like,
Yes.
what greater purpose, what greater moment would there to be you standing out there with a bunch of your brothers on the on the mall as a young Black boy, teenager. Hey, if something happens, God be with us. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I felt like that was important. And they didn't show up. And I went, and when I went and came back to school the day or so later, they were like, you actually went? I said, yeah, bro. And they were like, man, we watched it from TV. I was like, I was there.
That's incredible. I mean, it was such a historic moment. And for
Huge.
you to be a kid and to be conscious enough to know that you needed to be there, that was a part of your destiny. That's
Oh, man.
powerful in and of itself.
Let me tell you, Sister Kimmy, you know how you were saying, and this is crazy because even at 16 years old, like this thought came into my mind, and this is a real blessing of the Almighty. The fact that, you don't want to be one of these adults where when your children ask you, well, Dad, were you there for certain moments of history? And you be like, no, I wasn't there. You know what I mean? Like I've had conversations with adults and I've asked them, well, were you there when Dr. King did this or when Malcolm did that or when this moment happened? And they say, no, I wasn't there. Where were you? Oh, I was at home, or we just didn't get ourselves involved. And I mean, that's their choice, but it speaks volumes. You know what I'm saying? And I just never wanted to be that parent. And I was thinking about this. I was like, I don't want to be that person that when big moments like that of our history happens, like I wasn't there because I was too afraid or because
Right.
I didn't understand the fullness of the moment. And, trying to be there at every big moment and trying to be there for these big things that happen within our history, it's important. And, you know, years down the road, you don't always see the great benefit of a situation until time has passed. And then you start to realize like the seed that was implanted in you, even at my age of 16, and how that directed me for the life's work that I have committed myself to do, that has opened doors for me. You know what I mean? That has even made has blessed me to be added some level of substance to who I am as a black man. You know what I mean? Now I have a son and a daughter and be able to share that with my son. Like, son, I was there. Your daddy was there. Like, to have that pride, to say that, for him to have that pride, it's like my dad don't just talk about certain stuff. You know what I mean? He's really,
Right. It's about
he's
that
really
life.
about it. You
That's
know what I mean?
powerful. So how was that experience? Like, take us back. What do you remember
Oh man,
most?
like my dad took me. My dad, and growing up in a nation of Islam, that changes that gives you a worldview. And my
Mhm.
dad and my brother and we all went down there. That changed me. First and foremost, you never seen a million black men. People actually always ask me, was there really a million men? Bro, they were over 2 million men there. I'm serious.
That's
Like
a
we were like
that gives
this.
me chills. That gives me chills.
You know what I mean? And I mean, if you think back to what was happening in America, and it's particularly in Black America in 1995,
Mhm.
with the type of the way we were in our hip hop, where we were in our culture, the political space you had Newt Gingrich, you had Bill Clinton, I mean, just everything. There was a
Young
huge
black boys called super predators during that time.
super
You had
predators, that
Econ
whole
Bill,
situation.
the
The
war
whole
on
climate
drugs,
was the whole
all of it.
climate. Bill, let me tell you, the top movies in Hollywood, and they're considered to be classics now. Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society.
Mhm.
You know what I
I
mean?
grew up in South Central LA.
South
So
Central.
that's what it was.
That's what life. That was black life. Like
Right.
our experience, even then, when you think about it, 30 years ago, was put on display. And we were deemed as black men at that time. We were
Right.
deemed to be public enemy number one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was sensationalized to some degree as well,
Oh,
without
absolutely.
enough balance, right? And even to show how we got here. You just suddenly see movies showing life in the hood, showing a lot of danger, showing a lot of violence, but missing the overarching context of how we got here. We didn't create the conditions that lead to situations like we saw in Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood.
And see, that's the part that was always driven to me. What the march did was take it up to another level because it wasn't about policy. It wasn't about economics. It was about the spirit,
Mhm.
you know? And for a lot of us, when you really reflect of this mass gathering of men, particularly quote unquote, a troubled group of citizens, the black man of America, there needed to be a moment where we looked at all of these things that were happening and we stopped. And we didn't go to Washington on some political expedition. This was
Mhm.
it was a call to action for us to atone for our sins and take responsibility for our lives. It was a call to action for us to be reconnected to the Almighty,
Mhm.
right? And that's a spiritual journey
Absolutely.
for a group of people who were enslaved, and now you're in the backyard of your oppressor with no guns, not to
Right.
create havoc like what we saw on January the 6th. We didn't run
Right.
up no
That part.
Capitol walls. And all as a call to action to become closer to God. That is more powerful and much more of a threat to America than any demonstration has ever been, because you've never seen over 1 million black men coming together in a spirit of unity and peace and walk away.
Absolutely. I
to
remember
become
during
better
that.
men for their communities.
Yes. I
You know
don't
what I'm
know if
saying?
you remember the warnings, right? Because there were warnings that
Oh
were
my
issued,
God. Sis,
thread telling
sis,
people stay at home, they're gonna
I-
open fire. Do you remember feeling that or hearing
all
that?
that. It was hard not to. Look, I remember we got to the campground, we got to the grounds maybe about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was
Mhm.
cold. I mean, it was cold. And there weren't a lot of brothers out. You know, folks were still kind of straggling in. But by the time the sun started to rise,
Mm.
it became like 40 to 70 degrees. I mean, I'm sorry. By the time the sun
Wow.
started to rise, you saw the droves of black men filling the grounds, right? And I remember watching, just taking a look, and on the sides, you literally saw military equipment, tanks. You heard the helicopters over throughout the whole day. Helicopters. Clinton had left office for the day. Congress shut down for the day because they moved everybody else. They were preparing for a bloodbath
If only
in
they had
America.
been that prepared on January 6th.
None of that was prepared on January the
That's
6th. You see what I'm saying?
the
And
contrast.
we came in, look, so many black leaders, Reverend Jesse Jackson. We had so many, outside of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we had so many black leaders who at first were afraid. But then when leading up to that day, they decided to jump in and jump on. And the minister said, that's no problem. Go ahead. Here's the platform. Here's the space. And they can bear witness to the fact that on that day, they never been a part of a gathering of that magnitude. You could feel the energy. I mean, you really felt like God was present. I'm not
Yes.
even joking. I'm
I'm
serious.
sure God was.
You
God
could
had to be
feel
present.
like God was
God
present. Like,
had to be present.
let me tell you, there was, you know, you looked at what the enemy of our people, you saw how he prepared, but there
Mhm.
was an inner peace that was there. Like all of us
Yes.
felt this inner peace, like nothing's going to happen to us. And if something happened to us today, America is going to feel it today.
Right.
You know what I'm
I can
saying? Like
feel it.
there was
Even in your voice, I still feel
I'm
what
telling
you
you,
are
I
conveying.
mean, I remember standing there and I felt so secure
Mhm.
because I knew that if something would have happened to us, this is the end of the country. Because
Mm.
that's how much I had faith that the unseen forces. Because I truly
Woo, I
believe.
got chills.
I'm
Yes.
telling you, I truly believe, Sister Nakima, I truly believe to this very day. I know that if there was any disruption made by the enemy of that moment,
Mm.
America would not be in existence. I
Wow.
mean, I know that because it was like we called, you know, the call was given, we responded, we obeyed to the call, right? Not because of a man, but because of the spirit, the principle. Yes, you can't just disregard the minister for who he is and his ability to bring us together. But I knew that at the root of it, like if something were to really jump off,
Mhm.
the unseen forces would be made seen
Mhm.
and we will be protected.
That's right.
We would be protected because there was such a protected space. Like you didn't even want to, like when there was some brothers who may have, you know, a couple of brothers I think kind of bumped into each other, you know, brother, calm down. We don't need that today. And you felt it like, look, and there were white men that were present. I mean, in the masses.
Wow, I never heard that there were
Yeah,
white
there were
men
white men that
there.
were present, and they
That's
really. I mean, of course, sisters were present. We asked the women, "Hey, stay home," not because we don't think you're not important, just for safety and well being, and just cheer us on. Man, please
the sister
you
like,
tell
look,
a black woman that you want to see a million black men.
that part. We're like, listen, I'm glad they showed up. The sisters had to represent because
Sisters
we've
had to.
always
Y'all
locked
did y'all
arms
due
throughout
diligence.
history. No matter what
Right.
they try to do to us, we have locked arms, man, woman, and child,
Oh,
to
absolutely,
assert our
absolutely,
humanity, reclaim our humanity, to put our foot down when it comes to the
absolutely.
oppression that we experience.
And there were black women who were part of the National Organizing Committee. Minister Farrakhan had sat down with our sisters from the National Council of Negro Women. There were a
Mm,
number of women organizations who were providing guidance to the minister and the men in the room, saying, you
wow.
can't have this march without us. And of course, the minister say, absolutely not. We gotta have you right next to us. So there were women behind the scenes that were making the most of it, but the enemy wanted to try to make it seem as if we were against women. But the women that were working with us said, no, the Black man needs to be restored.
Right.
So let this be his time to be restored. He needs to be he needs to reconnect himself again. You know
Yes.
what I mean? This is good for the family. This is good for the community. This is good for the country. So
That
women
part.
understood it. It was only those who wanted to create dissension and discord that kind of ran with that narrative of, oh, they don't like women or they're misogynist or any of that stuff. There's a sister that I worked with in Baltimore as I was a part of the local organizing committee at 16 years old in Baltimore. Her name is Sister Eartha Harris. To this day, Sister Eartha Harris has been one of the most consistent Black women that has taken the torch of the Million Man March and has carried it on to this very day. To this day, she will tell you, I'm a part of the local organizing committee. And she's a dynamic woman. And she's watched me grow up in this process. So she has, it's women like her who have laid the foundation for young men and other young sisters to come into the space. So, there's so much that came out of the march. We as a people got to understand the value of what that demonstration really done to bring us into a better understanding of ourselves and of the creator himself.
That's incredible. We need to have more conversations like what
Oh
you
yeah.
just unpacked for us, right? Looking back retrospectively at what you experienced as a young person, feeling called to go, having your dad take you, like ushering you into manhood through that experience and
Oh
how it
yeah.
has, like you said, laid the foundation for who you are and everything you do right now as you ride for the culture, as you try to educate people, as you try to challenge the status quo. And I
Absolutely.
can imagine other men having that similar testimony of how their lives were transformed through that experience.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
so glad you took us back there.
I'm happy to go back there. And I think it's super important that we have just a moment to reflect on those things. And I know, Sister Nakima, one of the things is making sure that the great work that you're doing is making sure that we stay connected with the history side of things. And again, the Million Man March is a part of our history. And we can't act as if, that moment didn't take place. Just as much as we talk about the great civil rights movement that took place back in 1963, the Great March on Washington, we got to talk about the Million Man March. That
Absolutely.
is an evolution. That is an
Absolutely.
evolution. You see what I'm saying? And then
Mhm.
after the Million Man March, you had the Million Youth March. Then you had the Million Women March, right?
That's right.
Then we had the Millions More movement. Then we had the Justice or Else. I was one of the key organizers for the Justice or Else March back in at the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March back in 2015.
Tell us
And
about
going
that. Tell us
so
about
the
the
Justice or Else movement was looking at what has happened to our people in our community over the past 20 years. Did we take the lessons that we learned from the Million Man March and keep them sustained? And if you remember the social climate back then, President Barack Obama was still in office. And even more so, we saw the rise of police brutality cases.
Mhm.
And that was a huge element, huge part of the overall agenda for the Justice or Else movement, because it was us saying, if these things continue to happen, then we can't keep going running to our political leaders and expecting them to resolve these matters. We're going to have to take some matters into our own hands. It's
Right.
justice or else,
Right. So by any means necessary,
by any means
essentially.
necessary. And people was like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be another situation." And the minister had called us back to Washington D.C. and people wanted to try to compare the numbers. I don't know what the numbers are, but when I went and I took my wife and I were going, My son, he was a small child at that time. He went. People in my family who were not involved in any type of like social justice, racial justice work were helping us to organize for justice or else because
Wow.
they got to a point they were sick and tired. They went. And
Mhm.
other folks that we were able to get. Here's the beauty about justice or else. Whereas in 1995, it was a call to action for Black men, justice or else became a call to action for the Black college student. We had more Black college students that showed up for justice or else than we did, of course, for the original Million Man March. And the minister said that that was one of the big takeaways of that demonstration because now you're planting the seed in the next generation
Mhm.
about who they are. The beautiful part about Justice or Else was that it was a call to action, not just for Black people, but for our Native American brothers and sisters, our Latino brothers and sisters, right? We may come from different places and different culture, but we do have one thing in common, which is white supremacy. We have all been affected and oppressed as a result of white supremacy. So we can continue to do the infighting, or we can go and say, you know what, let's resolve our differences because the real enemy that
Right.
has affected us all is this thing called white supremacy, right?
Mhm.
And even white people that were present. Again, white people, and see, people people really think that white people are slow in this country, right? Or white
Right.
people are, and you have some that are like that.
You
But
do.
trust and believe,
But you
you
have
are
some
coming to
who are conscious enough to know what the real deal is,
look.
who
Let
don't
me tell you,
wanna be
I
a
talk to
part
them
of what
all the
they've been
time.
born into.
Look, they not stupid.
Right.
They are not stupid. They understand a couple of things I think there are a couple of dynamics. One is that in white America, they're tired of white supremacy as well.
Mhm.
And you might say, well, how do you know that? You can see them, whether you're talking about a Bernie Sanders, whether you're talking about other folks, other white voices. There are what they call whiteness scholars. Like you
Mhm.
have, I was reading a book about white fragility. And
Oh,
why
you're talking
are
about
you
Robin
find
DiAngelo.
Robin DiAngelo, thank you. And I read White Fragility, Sister Nakima, blew me away,
But
blew me
we
away.
also yes, but I gotta make this point,
Go ahead.
that a lot of that knowledge came from Black folks, in my opinion. I've
And
sat
look,
on stage with the
I
woman,
can't
I've
even look,
heard, and I'm
I
like,
can't even like
"Girl,"
debate with
I'm
you on
like,
that,
"I know
right?
you done been around the water cooler with some Black people telling you the real deal. It wasn't just." So there's an element of that too, but I hear you in terms of this just the boldness and the attacks that white folks come under when they're speaking the truth, right? And we saw it during the civil rights movement. White people who wound up putting their bodies on the line, some got killed for standing in solidarity with Black folks who were standing up for their rights and trying to push for an end to that Jim Crow system. And then if we look at 2020, after George Floyd was killed, here in Minnesota, Minnesota is over 85% white. We
Mm,
had so many white folks out on the front lines with us calling for justice for George Floyd and other victims of police violence and brutality. So I'm with you in terms of just the consciousness for some of them
that's the
being there
consciousness.
and them being a part of the change instead of just continuing to accept all the privileges, all the rhetoric, and everything that there you basically have to sell your soul to stay a part of white supremacy. And some people reject that, which I
It's a
appreciate when
lot.
I see it.
It's a lot. And here's some things, like you talked about like a Robin DiAngelo. One of the things that came up in her book I thought was important, and this always stuck out with me, is that like unlike Black folks, where we quote unquote, and even those who may not be as conscious as some, right?
Mhm.
But there is this storytelling that we have within our own culture that we're a
Mhm.
part of a quote unquote community, right? We be like the
Yeah,
Black community, right? Even though the numbers show that we're much bigger than your average community. We're actually a nation,
we are.
right? But we call it the Black community. But the thing that Robin DiAngelo pointed out in her book was that white people don't see themselves as part of the white community.
No, they're individuals. It's an individualistic society. There's not a communal nature. So when
What?
they see us grieving collectively, when you think about Emmett Till, George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, they're like, "Wait, what?
Right,
How
right, right, right,
this
right,
done?
right.
Is this a
And
part
see,
of us? That's
right,
my little
and like
brother. That's my," they don't understand that because they
that
were
alone. Hey, look, I'm telling you, sister.
individualistic mindset, not communal like us. We are a communal, kinship related, village related type of
Come
people.
on, sis. Come on. And that's exactly that struck a chord with me. That
Mhm.
struck a chord with me because it was like when Robin said they don't see themselves as part of the white, the only group of people, now I could be really wrong, but the only group of people that uses the term white community are the nationalists,
Right.
those who
Absolutely.
we deem as racist, far right, alt
Mhm.
right, however you want to
Oh, they
describe them,
organized. Oh, they know they're a community.
they community, right?
They are a
But see,
community
they
for
see
self.
themselves,
January
they
6th.
don't use it. They the ones that use white community, right? Because white people don't have the same relationship to institutions, power, and systems that we have now, that we have that
Right.
relationship with, right? So they don't see themselves outside of those things. They are very much aware. It's like a natural awareness where they're like, oh, I don't, they don't understand. Well, if a black person is beaten by police, that it affects all of
All
us.
of us. It's like, I don't know if it's something
And
in
they're
our
like, well, we
DNA or
mean
what, but it's a collective response,
it's a
collective
collective
grief
response.
that we share when those things happen.
Exactly. And they, it's like how many white males have done heinous acts in this country, all in the name of whiteness, right? So we can
Right.
go from the Timothy McVeigh, we can
Mhm.
talk about Dylan Roof, we can talk about all these people, but the white community, they don't grieve that like that.
Nor
They
are
don't
they held
process that.
accountable collectively.
No,
Nobody asked who raised them, what community did they grow up in, did
no,
they have a
no.
daddy in the home? The questions that are asked when anything happens in our community that they consider against the norm, our entire community is demonized.
Yeah.
We face all kinds of vitriol, hatred for an act. So then suddenly y'all see us as a community when one person in our community does something.
Right,
Right? But
right,
if
right.
a white person, God forbid, shoots up a grocery store, shoots up a church, it's that individual. They don't even extend it to look at the family dynamics. What kind of neighborhood did they grow up in? What kind of church did they attend? What kind of school did they attend? All of those are signals in terms of some of that learned behavior, but that
And,
never gets attributed to white culture or the quote unquote white community. It was that individual, and then
yeah.
likely they connected to, oh, they had mental health issues, right? That's the way the whole narrative is framed. And so white people are never really placed in a position to interrogate themselves,
And
interrogate
that's
their
heavy.
history. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about this, sister, and I'm glad that you pointed that out. That's heavy. See,
Mhm.
we wake up with blackness. We think about blackness, right? We think about blackness in relationship to the neighborhoods that we live in. We think about blackness in the sense of the places that we go to, the
Yes.
places that we work, where we worship, right? Where
Where
we
we
shop
drive,
at.
where we
It's
even drive.
always there. It's
Yes,
always there,
yes.
right? And that's why we have the psychological toll.
Mhm,
Which sometimes people say, well, I'm so tired.
mhm,
Because what's on your mind? Like if you just go on about your day,
mhm.
I'm in Los Angeles. So, when you driving through LA, whether you're going through West LA or whether you're going through South LA or whatever, or East LA, how you were born comes up in your mind. Like you
Absolutely.
driving through West LA, you driving through Beverly Hills, or you driving through, Larchmont, or driving through these neighborhoods, your blackness comes to mind.
Absolutely. It has to
Right,
protect yourself, to know we cannot lose a sense of consciousness about who we are because of the dangers that we face.
right,
It's
right,
like we're
right.
under threat just about everywhere that we go. And as
Yeah,
Black parents, how often do we have to take up that burden of taking away our children's innocence by trying to protect them and
right,
school them on what the world is really about and what has really happened historically? You can literally see the innocence fall away out of your child's eyes when you have to have the talk with them. But
right.
if you don't have the talk, you're setting them up for devastation in a
And
world
here's
that
my
doesn't
point on that.
accept it.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. because there has been, of course, there's much talk about what we saw with this Tyree Nichols case.
Mhm.
And it's such a heartbreaking case because the new word that's come the latest development in this case is that Demetrius Haley, one of the former Memphis police officers, really didn't have any reason to pull the brother over.
Right.
The word has come out that, according to some new documents, Tyree Nichols didn't even violate any traffic
No, that it was largely
laws.
a personal vendetta, from my understanding, that led to the brutal murder of Tyree Nichols at the hand. And that, when you think about that from that context, it makes sense in a very twisted way. But it was
Very twisted.
personal. He was targeted because of allegedly who he was dating and their connection to that officer. And as a matter of fact, one or more of the officers took photos
That was
of
Demetrius
Tyree
Haley.
Nichols' lifeless body and
That was Demetrius Haley.
texting like, how do you not see the humanity in somebody who looks like you?
And look, isn't that crazy? And considering that 3 out of those 5 black men were part of the fraternity.
Omega Psi Phi fraternity.
So you got, now look, this ain't no shade on them because I know brothers from Omega Phi Psi
Mhm.
Phi. They teach love and brotherhood.
Mhm.
They teach self-respect, self-love.
Right. And
So
riding for their people and
ride
that's
with
the
your
only
people,
thing
like
I've ever
any of
known
the
about.
fraternities, any of black fraternities or black sororities. So this is not an indictment on them because this just goes to show you that thinking.
Mhm.
And people often think that, oh, it's black faces. Like I'm of the view these dudes need to be put under the jail. I'm gonna
Mhm.
be honest with you. I don't care. Their blackness has nothing to do. Their black skin has nothing to do with what that they put that
No,
man
they
through.
were I've been telling
They
people,
need to
listen,
put.
they
I
were
don't even
blue.
want to
They
have.
were
Look,
blue that day, right? That
look,
whole blue culture, that blue wall of silence, that
hey,
brutality they
hey,
perpetuate, they were blue at that
sis,
point. And if they
sis.
do go to prison, the brothers in there are not going to be too happy
Hey,
seeing
and
them
guess
walk
what?
through the door
They
after
said,
what
and
they
guess
did.
what? Not one crocodile tear from this eye.
Mm-mm-mm.
No, seriously, not one tear. Because
Right.
guess what? You had an opportunity. You had more than enough chances. And if I couldn't, I'm gonna be honest with you, sis. I could not watch the tape.
I couldn't either.
I
I
couldn't watch
watched
the tape.
about
I
2
can't watch the
minutes
tape.
and I said, I can't do
I
this.
can't do it.
First of all, I was still traumatized from how many times we had to watch the video of George Floyd being
Come
killed.
on, sis. Come on.
Watching that
And I couldn't
trial
even watch that
over
before.
and over, seeing the video over and I couldn't I literally just changed my profile picture and my cover photo on Facebook last week. And it had images of us protesting. You know, my t-shirt said a man was lynched in Minneapolis on May 25th, 2020. That happened May 25th, 2020. I just got to the point where I could change my profile pic and cover photo because psychologically I was still back there in 2020, right? And in 2021 from the trial and again watching that video, seeing our black people being traumatized while they're trying to testify,
Right?
you know, about seeing a black body essentially being snuffed out right in front of them. So I could not watch that full
I couldn't
video
watch it.
of what happened to Tyree Nichols. And
I
for
couldn't watch it.
America to put 5 black officers on display, not even showing there was a 6th one who was white, you know, who made some very dehumanizing comments about Tyree Nichols, Happy's, and I hope they stomp his A. You know, like, wait a minute, where was he? Finally, because of public outcry, he finally got fired. But that should have been up there to begin with. And then I think we should go even a step further, right? When we're in the streets, we say the whole damn system is guilty as hell. And in this situation, that's apparent. Not just the cops, the EMTs who came and took their sweet time, didn't render aid, the chief of Memphis police who established that Scorpion unit. You hear the name Scorpion, you know what that means. And I would be surprised if this is the first time that they have inflicted violence on innocent black people in that community. Innocent
Oh
or
no,
not,
this ain't. This
period.
isn't. This
It's
isn't. This
not.
came. They came out with the report. Like I said, they just came out with this report today to show that
Wow.
this was pretty common.
Mhm.
This was a common behavior. This was a common form of conduct from these officers of the Scorpion unit. They had another unit that they talked about in Atlanta that they had to
I
disband
heard
the
about
Red
that.
Dog unit. I think that
Yes,
was called
very
Red Dog,
similar.
right?
That this same
In
tweet set
Baltimore,
up. Mhm.
we had a unit called the Gun Trace Task Force,
Mm,
which is a specialized unit of officers, right, who were supposed to take guns off the street,
mhm,
to get the guns off the street. They wind up being dirty. You know
mhm.
what I mean? They wind up busting hit too many heads. They
And see,
wind
the
up.
powers that be know that they're doing this stuff. That's why they
Oh,
get
let me tell you.
recruited into these units in the first place.
And let me tell you, sis, I had a sister on my show just 2 days ago. Her name was retired Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. She worked for the LAPD. She said for 20 years in patrol. She worked as used to be the technical director for the show 911 that stars Angela Bassett as a police officer.
Mhm.
And Sister Cheryl said, trust and believe that local police chiefs of every department know who the bad apples are.
Absolutely. And they put them all together.
And they put you together, and those officers have personnel files full of complaints. They have community files full of complaints. They know that they have behavior issues, temper issues, and they still allow them to serve on the force.
In the
So
black community. They're not sending
and
them
then they put us in
to a
our
white
community,
community. They
right?
put them right there in the heart of our community as a game, if you will, to try to keep people in line. It reminded me of the fact that not only did you have white overseers on slave plantations, you had black overseers as well on slave plantations that helped keep that system in place, that were an extension of the terrorism that the white master and the people who work for him inflicted on black folks.
That's
So
right.
this part, that is nothing new in
That's right.
terms of black people being used as weapons against their own people.
That's
And that's
right.
what we saw happen. So there needs to be a lot more heads that roll in Memphis from the top all the way down to the bottom, all the way to the EMTs, and
Right.
anyone
I
who knew
thought you.
or came close to the terrorism being inflicted by that Scorpion unit. Period.
I couldn't agree with you more. We read that, of course, we know that there were 7 other officers
Uh-huh.
who were disciplined as a result of what happened
They
to
need
Brother
to be
Tyree.
fired and they need to be
They need
charged
to be
because they
fired
were
too.
complicit.
And
They
look,
didn't
criminal
intervene.
charges. Criminal
Absolutely. Just like
charges.
they would brothers. If you saw two brothers doing something in the street,
Yes,
all
ma'am.
the ones around being implicated, charged with these, doing something for the benefit of a gang, even if you weren't physically involved, there's brothers sitting in prison right now for being at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes,
And when it
ma'am.
comes to police officers, we have to hold them to a higher standard, given the protection of the law that they enjoy, the fact that they can have high powered weapons. They have authority over people's bodies, possessions, can bust into their houses. There needs to be a higher level of accountability, not lower simply because they were an officer. No, you took an oath to protect and to serve. You didn't live up to that oath. You violated that oath. So you need to be held accountable. Period.
That's
Point
right.
blank.
No,
I don't care
no
what color
doubt.
you are. You did it.
Look,
You need to be held accountable immediately.
and here's the one thing well, there are a couple of things actually. One is we can't legislate our way out of this, right?
That's right.
Because policies doesn't automatically dictate or will not impact human behavior.
That's
One of the
right.
things that I've learned, and I'm a student of social science. I love reading about human behavior. I love reading about how people make decisions and that whole process. And one of the things that I've learned is that human beings, we love the familiar, and we behave because of a number of ways. If you're going to change the behavior of any human being, even just saying to them, hey, if you don't act right, these are going to be the consequences that you suffer.
Mhm.
That's not enough, especially for an adult,
Right.
especially if they feel like the way that their behaving is going to garner them more benefit and incentives than the consequences will,
Right.
right? And so when you look at that level of behavior, and this is the conversation that I think a lot of people have been having, and I'm pushed back on it a little bit because it's like I'm tired of having discussions about training. I'm
Mhm.
tired of having discussions about morality. police departments train people. They
Mhm.
train them. You know what I mean? If an officer is coming to a call and they see somebody, I mean, we just had a situation out here in Huntington Beach where they shot a double amputee.
Mhm.
What threat does a person who doesn't have certain limbs, what threat would they be to an officer who has all
Right.
limbs, access to a gun, baton, and
And
you
a tech
shoot that man in the back?
right. That's outrageous.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you're talking about this ain't about training. This isn't about they didn't know what to do. This is seriously about the thinking of an individual
Mhm.
who feel like they got power and authority.
Well, some
Who
have been
is
trained into that,
who's
right?
trained into that? But here's the thing: their moral compass of what's right and what's wrong
It's
is
distorted.
just completely shattered.
Mhm.
You see what
Absolutely.
I'm saying? Like morally,
Absolutely.
morally, why would you shoot a man that doesn't have all of his limbs?
That's right.
You know what I
It's
mean? Morally,
because it's
why would you beat up
despicable.
on a man? Like in case of Tyree Nichols, not one officer, and this is why I say they threw him underneath the jail. Not one black officer said, "Hey, man, hold up."
That's
They
enough.
look. New York
Right.
Times did a piece around them, but around Tyree, real quick. New York Times did this piece of Nakima and it blew me away, saying that they ordered Tyree Nichols. They gave him 71 commands.
Mm.
Often, many of those commands were contradictory. So you're
Right.
talking about 4 or 5 officers. Here you are laying on the ground. One officer telling you to get up. Another one's telling you to stay down. One officer said, show your hands. Another one got your hands behind your back.
See, they're
71 commands
playing in his
in a
face and our
13-minute
face.
period.
Because they know the body cams are on too.
Well,
That's
see,
the
the
part
thing
of the
about the
game.
body cams, they took off the vest that the cams were attached to, right? Because some of the footage, and they got up to 20 hours of footage that the attorney general, the state's attorney said, the prosecutor said, they got up to 20 hours of footage. But the body cams were taken off. They found that some of the officers took off their vest where the
They
body
knew
cams were attached.
exactly what they were doing. They knew, and they need to be held accountable to the
That's
fullest
the
extent
ground.
of the law. Even with
And
all
that's the
the
thing.
analyses they're doing, well, I'm like, now we know what we saw,
Yeah.
right? Even that little 2 minutes. But it becomes a big circus, right? Trying to make us think we didn't see what we saw when they bring in, okay, this is why this happened. And no, we know why it happened. You
Right.
didn't see the man's humanity. You were perpetuating anti-blackness. You were perpetuating a personal vendetta. You didn't think his life mattered. So you were okay treating a grown man, a father, like a rag doll.
Mm,
Just as we've seen throughout history when it was nothing for them to have black bodies hanging from trees.
mm.
Same mindset that went into that is the same mindset we see today.
And,
So
and
we're
and
gonna
look,
have to come back for part 2
I
about
mean,
and
we got to come back.
pick
And
this
look,
back
I'm just
up because
saying, look,
wow.
I hope those men will forever lose sleep.
Mhm.
I hope they will forever lose sleep. And this is something Ben Crump said, attorney Ben Crump said at the funeral of Tyree Nichols. He said they didn't see the humanity in Tyree.
That's right.
And he asked the question, he said, why didn't they see the humanity in Tyree? And this is why when we have these conversations, and this is something else that I saw when the president had his State of the Union
Mhm.
just this past Tuesday of this week, he introduced the mother and the stepfather of Tyree Nichols.
Mhm.
He said, I want to introduce them to Congress. There was a moment, Sister Nikema, where I was thinking to myself, something is off about this.
Mhm.
Because as they stood, and you could see the weariness on Tyree mother's face, and
Mhm.
just how tired she was being, going through this process. People started clapping. People
Mm.
started clapping, right? And I think culturally we clap because we want to
Wanna
affirm some
affirm.
level of
Right.
strength,
Mhm.
but it just felt inappropriate to me.
Right. Absolutely.
Because why are you clapping when
Right.
I'm grieving?
That's right.
Why are you clapping when you saw my son being brutally beaten on camera?
Mm, mm, mm.
And the thing about it, even more so than that, is that unfortunately, we have taken the family members and the victims who have lived through these things and made them Black celebrities of Black pain.
Mhm.
They become the face of Black pain, right?
Right, for
And
something they never asked for.
that they never
I hear
asked
the
for.
mothers talk, they're like, now we are
Sabrina
part of a
Fulton,
sorority that we never signed up to be a part of,
exactly.
rooted
And
in
like
pain
Sabrina Fulton,
and
the
trauma.
wife of Trayvon Martin,
The
she
mother,
never wanted that.
right, that's right, and there's so many other mothers who say
So
the same
many other
thing,
mothers.
and
Tamia's
there's
Rice
no
mother.
escape. There's no escape, and then when the next one happens, they relive that trauma all over again.
All over again.
It's just a game, right? Because once what they put it out there, then the news cycle dies down. Most people go back to business as usual, like it never even happened. And it's like,
And
listen, when will we get that energy? Like you said, justice or else. When will we rise up and demand that we be treated the way that we deserve to be treated in this country and not just be complacent and complicit with what's going on?
well, let me just offer this, and I know our time is limited. Let me say this, and I said this on the show. If you look through history, our greatest achievements never came when we were in a moment of triumph. They always came in a moment of great despair and pain.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the things I heard Minister Farrakhan say one time, he said that pain can be the mother of something good to happen,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just as much as a woman goes through pain in giving birth, look at the end result.
Right.
So if in this moment of darkness that we find ourselves in relating to this issue and many other social, economic, political issues, right? The moment of darkness that we find ourselves in, this is actually the best time
Mm-hmm.
for us to organize, to strategize. This is actually the best time for us to rethink how we're going to move forward.
That's right.
All of America is currently looking at how are Black people going to respond?
Yes.
Are we going to respond violently? Are we going to respond just pushing a political agenda?
Mhm.
Like, how are we going to respond? Right?
That's right.
And this is painful. And for us, even in our culture, we can't operate, we can't relate to or put our people who have suffered great pain, we can't put them on a pedestal like they're celebrities and not understand their own humanity.
Right. Absolutely.
This is hard, but there's an opportunity that out of this pain, they can become some real power.
That's right. That's right.
If
I'm in
if if
100%
we
agreement.
just if we just see it, if we are guided to it, if we
And
have a
take
culture.
action. Once we see it, then we take action. And there's no greater time like today. If we could
Come
have
on, come
people
on, come on,
feeling
sis.
so strongly about the former president, quote unquote, that they're willing to stand up and put whatever on the line, what's happening with us, right? This opportunity is here for us to stand up, to rise up, to speak up, and to show up.
That's it.
Not us, then who? If not now, then when? The time
And
is now.
I refuse. I have a son who's 9. My daughter is 3.
Mhm.
I refuse that in 10 years or 15 years, my son come up to me and be like, Dad, they talking about police brutality. Isn't this the same thing y'all been talking about
Mm,
25, 30 years ago?
that's sad.
The thing that we pass on, we talk about what do we pass on to the next generation. Unfortunately, in some ways, Black folks, we pass on the legacy of pain,
That's right.
the burden of oppression. And at some point, we got to say when is enough. We can't just gloss over it. We can't legislate our way out of it. We got to put something on the line, which is why the whole Black resistance for this theme, the theme of Black History Month, is so important. It's like we have to break out of our comfort zone and sacrifice ourselves, to sacrifice something
That's right.
to ensure that the next generation isn't isn't saddled with
The
to
same
undo
burdens.
the unfinished business that we didn't have the courage to finish.
Absolutely. Well, I think that you have had the courage and to
I
step
thank
up
God.
and to stand up. And there are many brothers and sisters who have been courageous and who have helped to pick up the torch, pick up the ashes that were left from long ago and breathe new life into them. And I think that
Absolutely.
that's our call right now. You know, in 2023 and beyond, we have to do our part. No excuses. I mean, what else are we doing that's more important than fighting for us?
Hey, look. I'm. Then what's the next 5 years in this country going to look like for Black America?
Right. That's right.
I mean, seriously, that's how urgent these problems have become.
Mhm.
That we can't even talk about. At one time, and we could say, oh, in 20, 30 years, things are going to deteriorate. I'm saying in the next 5,
Mhm.
at a time
We
frame that
told
we
the
can all
people.
like manage and process and wrap our minds around. In 5 years, what will be the state of Black people in this country? What will be the state of America in five
Absolutely, we
years?
keep down this path. But we
Come on.
told them in Minneapolis after I went to Ferguson, I'm like, "We're next. This is the next battleground for civil rights right here." I mean, that was in 2015 when we started declaring that Minneapolis is
Mm,
next. You think they listen? I'm like, the
mm.
conditions Black people experiencing here and the conduct of the Minneapolis police, we are next if we don't address it. They scoffed at me, they laughed, they acted like we were just talking, and then look what happens. You have the world looking at Minneapolis because of a lynching at the hands of police. So
Absolutely.
I'm with you that there is a sense of urgency, and Dr. King said it, the fierce urgency of now.
That's
We
it.
need to go right back to those words and have that urgency in our hearts
That's it.
and push for
Amen.
the changes that we need to see. But we gotta do a part 2 because we
Yes,
just
ma'am.
this is so powerful.
I
I
enjoy
think
it.
honestly, we could be here for hours just like because we just vibing, we on the same wavelength, talking about these issues. So I hope that you'll come back,
Oh,
not
yes,
just
ma'am.
for part 2,
Absolutely.
but every now and then, let's just get together and talk about what's happening with the culture.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
would
Now
just
I'd love to
love to
bring
be
you
able to
back
do
on.
that and pick your brain and just have you educate people and we just vibe off each other because
Yes, ma'am.
this is electric. Like this is powerful. So I'm
Absolutely.
grateful to you for your
I
passion,
thank you.
your commitment, just everything you've done and continue to do. And I just want to encourage you. Take the rest when you need to rest and then keep going.
I
Period.
appreciate that.
Ancestors are with you. So
Oh
thank
my
you so
God.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate you,
Thank
my
you.
brother.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Sister Nakima. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to your team and everybody that's done the great work to support you. I know that you are a huge, huge voice in this struggle and this liberation for our people. And we need it. And I thank you for having the courage to continue to do the work as a Black woman, as a citizen of the Black nation of this country. I know that you could be doing anything else with your brilliance, but
Thank you.
you have made the decision to do this work. And I don't want anybody to take that for granted. That when we hear voices like you and others who are doing this work, you wanna live out your years in peace as well.
Right. Yep,
You
exactly.
don't want to think about, the
Right,
struggle and the pain all the
all the
time.
time, mind just going like, "How we gonna fight today? What we gonna do today? Who we gonna
Right,
challenge
right.
today?"
So all of this, for all of us who are doing this work in whatever capacity we're doing it, like this is actually a labor of love. This is this is
That's right.
this is an intentional decision. This is a choice that we have made, and we are compelled by the examples that our ancestors have laid. But more importantly, I don't want to pass this on to no others, no other generation, man. We
That's
gotta
right.
something gotta give. Something gotta
That's
give.
right.
And I
That's
can't
our
and
call.
and I told my son when I first had my son, I was like, there are two things I'm trying to do. I'm trying to protect his Blackness and his boyness. And
That's
at
right.
this point, as he growing up into a young man, I'm like, look, something gotta give because daddy just want to pass on more pain, more
That's
hardship on you, bro. Like something's gotta give.
well, you've also passed on the warrior spirit, and
Oh,
that
yes, ma'am.
I mean, and that is significant. That warrior spirit, that heart, that passion, that energy, and the spirit of our ancestors. That's a gift. Even in
Mm,
the midst of the struggle, it's a gift.
amen. Amen. I say.
Amen. This is powerful. So I gotta have you back. I hope you're willing
Yes,
to
ma'am.
come back and
Thank
we'll
you.
get into some more things. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. I really appreciate you.